like a 1940s book written by a French philosopher, and like he kills a man and he's like trying to.
All right, so it's recording now. Sorry, the OBS wasn't capturing audio. I think it is now. There's the little green line bouncing up and down. So
just
I'm gonna
do a voiceover, make it a really silly voiceover.
yeah, you know, do dubs.
I do the big dumb. You could put spooky, scary skeletons over it.
Yeah.
Yes!
Scan it.
Can you just do that for whatever class? Don't we have your class on Halloween?
Probably.
I won't be here.
It's
fine.
absolutely allowed. I know that's what you're thinking. It is absolutely
I'm
allowed.
going to because I get
Yes.
I won't be here for Halloween.
You could show us all the horrible things Maya can do on Halloween.
I'm gonna try to get it
So,
out.
So we're going to talk about a couple of things before we jump in to this week's stuff. The first one being on your desktop. Sign up for advising. Yeah, if you don't do this, you probably won't get the classes you want next semester, and because advising is already filling up. And if you don't get the classes you want next semester, then that means you're going to be stuck taking a bunch of stuff you didn't feel like is getting you closer to graduation. Like these classes are in pretty high demand, so you don't want to just be left to pick whatever's left. And we only have one advisor, so her schedule's filling up quick. Hop on there and do that as soon as you can. Yes.
When does registration officially start?
I don't know. Like off the top of my head, I don't know it. What happens is it starts on a week based off of when your expected graduation time is, or like there's different it like opens up at different times for different people. I think it's do you know?
No, I'm just having
A different question. So how registration opens up though is like graduating seniors, they get to register first, and then it kind of you'll get an email to let you know when your when your registration time is, and then you just get on there and find everybody else in this class for those classes. So yes.
I'm a first semester
Oh,
freshman.
sorry,
I'm
you have a
already
question.
registered. So I think you guys will be.
What? Really?
What?
I sent you an email about it too.
Wait, what?
Wait,
You're already registered for next semester?
Yes. To like do my classes.
But I mean, have you already registered for the classes, or are you already registered for
For the meeting.
the meeting? Okay. The meeting is where she tells you which classes to take.
But-
And then when your registration time opens up, you get online and sign up for those classes. So, yeah, what was your question? Sorry.
So, if we pick out our classes with her and we haven't already registered, then how can they be filled by her? Is that
Yeah, she's not locking them down for you. She's advising you on what to take.
okay?
So basically,
okay.
some of that advisement may.
So, it doesn't matter whenever our meeting is. It just matters if we can get it registered as quick as possible.
It does matter when your meeting is. No, you just signed up for advising. It does matter when your meeting is because if you wait too late, your advising meeting may be after registration has already started, and that means you can't register. Huh?
Well, then, because I've already scheduled it, but I scheduled it kind of late because I didn't get. I mean, like I knew it mattered, but I was like,
Yeah. It probably
Sign up anyways.
we try to make the classes to where they don't all fill up, but at the same time, we don't want a bunch of empty classes, right?
Mhm.
So more than likely, you're advising. Most of you, the advisement is going to be take the other two principles classes, right? The thing you want to watch out for is everybody else will be advised that too, and if you wait too late, then you may those classes may be filled up, and you're only able to get one, and then that puts you back a semester. So I don't want to scare you about it. Just sign up for advising so she can tell you what to take. It also helps her if she knows if she sees that we're going to need an extra principles of visualization class because she's advised so many people to take that, then we'll know to open that section up. So, yes.
Two things. One, I got this email a while ago, and I don't know if it's too late, but I like people who haven't taken I think what is it called, CSCI?
oh yeah.
So you can test out of it. Is there a last minute time to where you can test out of it? Yeah, I don't need the credit. That's the thing.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not for sure about that. That would be something that ask
Are
her
you
about
asking
or.
if you can still sign up for the classes and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I did that yesterday.
How did you study for it?
I don't know. It's just, it's just Word and Excel. So.
Oh, okay. And then my
So-
other thing was like, isn't it today like we get our progress reports? Like all of the progress reports should be in right now.
That is where we're getting at. Let me get past the advisory part.
Sorry.
So, okay, hold on. Stick with me, everybody. Everybody. So yes, advising schedules a meeting with your advisor. She will tell you which classes you need to sign up for when your registration time comes around. You will go in there and sign up for them yourself, right? So there's that. The other thing, Colette, right? Cosette. Okay. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to remember. Just pointed out that you probably are going to get your. I don't know when they come out. I know when I had to have them in by, but you should be getting your early semester progress report grades pretty soon. That's kind of like your midterm grades. I would imagine they're going to be in D2L. I never have to check mine.
They're also on there. So I just logged in and it's also on there.
Is it also on the ETSU campus? What is that? eab.com?
And
Where's Wilson Wallace? Oh,
No.
right here. Sorry.
Yes.
When is registration open?
So it'll probably be about 2 or 3 weeks from now. I can't remember. It's after fall break though. So I'm not. Huh?
This is my meetings later, anyway.
Yeah, check the ETSU academic calendar. I don't know if it has when registration begins then or not. Yours, since you're freshman, will probably be a few days into the registration time. Like you're probably not going to register on Monday. It'll probably be like a Wednesday or something like that. But you should get an email about that or some sort of information through registration on how to do that. That's another reason to talk with Deborah because again, I don't register for class or deal in any of that stuff. She'll be able to tell you where you'll see all that information when you meet with your advisor. So yeah, your early semester progress report is sort of like your midterm grades. It's like you're halfway through, you get your grade card and you took it home and you changed some letters on it before you gave it to your parents. This one's digital and your parents can't see it, right? So I mean, unless you give them access to it. But this is kind of letting you know how your progress is going. I have the grade that is in there right now should be the same as the grade that is in D2L. So those are 2 different gradings, right? ETSU doesn't care what grade I have in D2L. They're not going to go digging into D2L to see what that is to let you know. That's for me and you to have that conversation, right? I could have placeholder grades there, whatever we want. What happens though is twice a year they ask me, how's that student doing? And I give them what your grade is in D2L right now. So if you go into D2L, like sort of your progress there should show you that. If that grade is lower than you wanted it to be, if you're like, that's a C and I was hoping for a B, then you'll be able to see from your rubric, from all the progress, where you need to work to revise to get better at that, or to raise that grade. Which brings me to my third thing. So, how many of you know about what's going on tonight? Anybody, did Marty send out any emails about the portfolio reviews?
Oh, I saw something about it, but I didn't know what it was.
Okay, that's why I bring it up in class today. So I don't know if you sent. I don't know where did you was like.
There was like a poster or something up there.
Okay, yeah. So the posters that are outside. So this will be a longer conversation. We'll be having this conversation in a few weeks here, where we get a little bit more open lab time to chat about it. So you have a couple of milestones in your time here at ETSU. The first one is these classes, right? You take these 4 classes, and then in your sophomore year, you use the work from these 4 classes to apply, right? So you may have noticed, like if you were looking at other art schools, they wanted to see a portfolio before they let you into the school, right? We didn't. We said, welcome to ETSU, you're a digital media major.
Yeah.
Your sophomore year is where we go, this isn't cutting it. You're out. So you don't actually get kicked out, but what we have is a class in your sophomore year where you present the work you're doing here and say, can I take junior and senior level classes? And sometimes the answer is no, right? The answer is keep taking this class until this work gets better and then we'll let you move on, right? That is the first time anybody in this department is going to ask to see your portfolio, right? I took that in air quotes because your portfolio is just the body of work you've created, right? Many of you maybe came in here with a portfolio and didn't even know it because you have an iPad that's full of Procreate drawings that look really good, right? And your portfolio is not something that's ever finished. Like, I'm constantly updating mine, right? So at your sophomore year, that's when we ask to see those and say, yeah, you're ready to move on to your junior and senior classes and those higher level classes where stuff gets a lot harder. Your very last semester here, when you're getting ready to graduate, we say, we want to see your portfolio one more time before we let you graduate. And so all of the seniors have to get up and present their portfolio to all the faculty and to anybody else who wants to show up and watch it. I am formally inviting you to show up and watch it tonight. All of the seniors, well, it'll be tonight and Thursday night, starting at about 5:15. I think we have about 17 students that'll go between those 2 days. So we'll go through about half of them tonight, the other half on Thursday night. And you'll get to see what the work should look like before you graduate. Now, I'll say, how we say that is, show us your portfolio one more time before you can graduate. And sometimes the answer is, no, try again, right? So, yes. Question.
Only 17?
I think 17 or 18. It's something. It's a kind of the spring. The fall semester is always a little smaller. The spring semester it'll be like 25, 30, maybe even 40 students. So
So you guys do this twice?
we do this. Yes, I'll kind of explain that a little bit more in a second. Yeah.
What time did you say it was?
It'll start at 5:15 and it'll go until we're out of students. So
Sorry, roughly.
5:15 until we run out of students. So tonight and Thursday night. So we're not looking at all 17 students both nights. We're looking at half of them tonight, half of them Thursday night, from 5:15 until they're done. They're probably going to be about 15, 20 minutes of presentation. So,
Okay.
yes.
Is the work that's on the big screen downstairs, is that all student work?
Yes. I think if you look at the big screen next to the door, those are previous portfolios that people have been showing.
Okay.
And so that's what you'll see, is sort of like the people who are graduating, that's where you're headed, right? Now, we look at them halfway through the semester to give them feedback. So this is the midterm version of their portfolio review. They're going to present it. This is usually the one that's a little harsher, right? Like where we're like, you got to present this again at the end of the semester. This is what you have to do to make it look good, right? To make it to where we say, congratulations, you graduate, right? And so sometimes the feedback is a little more significant here. On this review, you'll see both really great stuff. You'll see cringeworthy stuff, right? I want you to be there so you can see them both, right? Because the really awesome ones are awesome. We're like, oh, that's so good. Tell me how you did that. That's really cool. Oh, can we see that piece again? Right? It's really exciting, right? And then you'll know when the bad ones happen. Like, it'll just be crickets, and then Todd will be like, what was that? and it's really like, it's really not mean, but we want you to be successful, right? And I want you to see that, so you will have it in your mind of which of those two presentations you want yours to be when you get to that point.
Bad one. If you make them silent, they're just so impressive.
You just dumbfound us. We're like, I don't even know where to begin. Yeah.
So when that does happen, do you like present from like one principal class, or you do like all your principal classes? Like,
So there's two different things. There's the midpoint, or the sophomore level portfolio review, right? And that's not what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the senior level. But when you present at the sophomore level, you're presenting stuff from all four of your principal's classes, and then you'll say, I want to go into the animation concentration, or I want to go into the game design concentration. And what we do is we look at everything, and then we focus in on the thing you want to do, right? So there'll be a lot more about that, but you'll see that in the curriculum. I think it's called midpoint review. The names get a little confusing because there's portfolio review, midpoint review, This is the midterm portfolio review for the seniors. So it's a little confusing.
So if in the midpoint review, like the one that you really don't like is not looking too hot, they won't like.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah. So if you're taking 4 concentrations and one of them is a stinker, and you're like, you know what? I really do not like animation. I scraped by with a C, but I am killing it in visualization. My work is awesome. Then in midpoint review, what you say is, I want to go into visualization, and you make that stuff look really good. You probably try to fix the animation stuff a little bit too, so it's not just like the stinky folder. And you have about a half a semester to get all of that stuff up to par, so you can apply. Actually, I think that's due just a little bit in a couple of weeks here. So yes.
Is there ever an instance where you see a student's work and the concentration they want to go into, their work doesn't reflect that as well, but it reflects in another concentration?
Yep. So what we do is for that midpoint review, the sophomore level class, you meet with the faculty as many times as you want to discuss what should I do, right? What should I be working on? What should I fix for my principal's classes? How do I fix this thing I forgot, right? All of that. But then the other thing is, if we look at that and we're like, really? You want to do animation? Your game design stuff looks really good. And like that's where we have that conversation and get you sort of pointed in the right direction to apply to the right concentration. Yes.
So let's say sophomore year, you're told, no, you're not ready yet. Like what do you do then? Do you just change your major and give up?
Great point. So this is actually, we have some time set aside a little while later. We'll dig into this deeper for you to be coming up with these questions. But if that happens in your sophomore year, you go through midpoint review and we're like, sorry, you didn't make it this time. It's a 1 credit hour class, so it's not a very big impact on your GPA. And it's a pass-fail class. You either get pretty much an A or an F, right? What you would do is your next semester, you would take it again if you really want to be in digital media. If you fail it, but you're like, you know what, actually, it turns out I like computer science better anyway. To make it sort of less impactful on your transcript is you already have most of a digital media minor, right? And the digital media minor doesn't need the midpoint review class, so you would just take 2 more classes, and if you're changing your major, that way you have the digital media minor. But if you're wanting to stay in digital media, what we do is we sit down with you, we talk with you about why it didn't pass, and say these are what you should be focusing on, and then you just take it again the next semester. All it's really doing is preventing you from taking 3,000 and 4,000 level classes, so you can still take 2,000 level classes your second semester of your sophomore year. So it doesn't really hold you back unless you fail it like 4 times, right? And usually at that point, like we've had a lot of conversations with you and kind of come up with your plan. So yeah, we've had plenty of people who are actually really good at this, who failed it the first time, like sometimes on a technicality, like they forgot the date to turn it in. And it's not caused them any major problems. You're just submitting in, the grade replaces in your transcript, and it doesn't really hurt your GPA. Like you may have like a 4.9 or a 3.99 instead of a 4.0 or something like that. I'm assuming you all are hovering right at 4.0, right?
I'm already failing in my class.
No. So what I would say is, don't worry, we're not going to let you miss any of this stuff, right? I have a lecture a little bit later in the semester where we just come in and I let you dump questions on me about all of that, about the industry, like jobs, different things like that, and we just spend a whole class talking about that. But I wanted to kind of give you that heads up. One, so you don't just like start deleting your files. Like you have like, I don't need this principles of visualization stuff anymore. I'm just going to delete it. Save all of that stuff. You are going to need it again in your sophomore year. But the other thing is, tonight is the seniors presentation, right? These are the people who are graduating. So this is really like, what are you aiming at long term? What are you aiming at? Where are you aiming at being in 4 years, right? And I want to invite you all to come out to see that, because that is really encouraging. At times, sometimes it'll be a little discouraging. You'll be like, my stuff doesn't look nearly that good. How do I get to that point? The answer, 4 years of hard work, right? So don't worry about it. Your stuff is not going to look as good as some of the stuff you'll see tonight. And And then the other thing is just to kind of give you a an idea of what the bar is, right? What is success in the digital media program, right? I think it's really important to see, so much so that if you go, I'll give you extra credit. Right? So the extra credit is sort of defined in a certain way. I'll give you, this doesn't sound like very much, I'll give you 1 point on your lowest project grade. Yes. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to wait until the end of the semester, but whatever project is low for you, like let's say you didn't do very well on the bridge, you have an 18 out of 25, the difference between 18 out of 25 and 19 out of 25 is pretty big, right? Like that's the 76? Like the difference between like a 72 and a 76, I think. So like that's going to bump that up. It may make the difference between you having a B in this class and an A minus in this class, or a B plus and an A minus. So it's really raising sort of a project grade up by 3 or 4 points, depending on how that's balanced, right? That's how important I think it is for you to see that. Now, there are 4 opportunities to see this. We do it twice this week, and we do it twice the last week of the semester. Not finals week, but the week before that. So you can choose any of those 4, but you can only get the extra credit once. I would encourage you to go to all 4 of them because I know the students who always go to those, and those are the students who are doing really well in digital media, like paying attention to that stuff. I recognize you got may have some schedule conflicts. It is, I don't know if it's in the ballroom, it is in the rest of the Millennium Center. I think that there's a map downstairs, or a room number downstairs. I think it may be in one of those, it's either in the ballroom or it's in that auditorium, I think. Like if you, on the first floor auditoriums that are on the side, in the big entryway. I actually need to look that up too. So, but usually what we do is Radina hangs up a map that kind of points you to where it's at, or at least a note that says the room number, and you can just walk around on it. If you can't be there at 5:15, let's say you have a class that goes to like 6 o'clock or something like that, you can come in a little bit late. You can leave early if you want to just hang around for like a few hours and then leave. It'll probably run, I'm guessing probably about 3 hours, maybe a little more based off of the number of students. Huh?
Where is this again?
Over in the Millennium Center, I'm not for sure which room number right now off the top of my head, but there are some signs hanging out downstairs that will guide you to it.
Okay.
So, how do you get the extra credit? That's probably the question you have. I am going to kind of go on a type of honor system. There's 2 things you can turn in. I'll make a folder up here on the network. There are 2 ways you can turn some stuff in to get that extra credit. One is you could write a quick half-page synopsis of what you've seen and what you thought about it, right? Anything you learned from it, right? For those of you who are writing a verse, you can also take a selfie with the rest of the room in the background, right? Like the faculty up there in the front of the room. I'm doing this on the honor system that selfie implies you stayed there for more than 2 minutes, right? Trust me, like, if you go through all the work to go over there and don't sit there for a little while and get the benefit of this, this is one of the more beneficial things you can do. So much so that I'm willing to give you pretty much 3 free points for it, or 1 point on project. Yes?
So where you are taking a selfie with what we need?
Just some evidence in the background that you were actually in there in that room. Yeah, so probably like the faculty is all going to be setting up front where you can see my fat butt sitting up there like sipping a Coke, right? Like it's like somewhere where you can see that.
You want us to email it to you?
I'll have a folder up on the network, and so you'll just drop that picture in there. Make sure you name it. I'll probably know from your face, but name it so I'll know who to give the extra credit to. What I usually do is I leave that folder up there until the end of the semester because there's some more opportunities to do it. And then that's the last thing I do. After I'm putting in all the final grades, I go back, I see who put in the extra credit work, and I bump up your grade a little bit in D2L to get that number. So,
You said 5:15?
yeah, it starts about 5:15. If you are kind of coming in a little bit late, just don't kick in the door and be like, "I'm here," and then just sort of sneak in and grab you a seat. I know that tonight, so we kind of divide them up into groups. I know tonight is, I think, some stuff with the game design concentration and the visual effects concentration. It's actually really heavy visual effects this semester. Animation is tomorrow night, I think. But we only have, I think, 3 people who are doing animation specifically. Usually it's a little bit of a larger group. I think they all graduated last semester. So I expect next semester to be a little heavier on animation. So, yeah, so visualization and visual effects are kind of sprinkled throughout both nights. All right, other questions before we kind of jump into some stuff today? All right. So, so that was a big lead in. We're 25 minutes into the video. So let's look at D2L really quick. I want to, there we go. So a couple of things this week to consider. We are in week 7. So before we look at anything, I want you to look down here along the side. We have week 7. Next week is fall break, which means if you show up in here on Tuesday, I'm not going to be. I think, if I'm not mistaken, fall break is Monday and Tuesday. Is that right? Yeah. So there's no class. Go do whatever it is that relaxes you. Go visit family. That may not relax you. I don't know. But the folder up here for fall break is pretty empty. Right? You'll notice that I have the option to turn in a revision, and then I have a fall break assignment that says, "Have a great fall break." I will meet in here in class on Wednesday, but it will mainly be open lab time, open work time for you.
Hold up.
Or is Wednesday fall break or not?
I don't think it is. But
Is it
I
not?
was about to get really excited.
Okay, then that's my typo there. Sorry. So basically, I just realized that next week is kind of a wash, really, right? So since we're getting started on this next big project, you'll have enough stuff to keep you busy. The other thing that we can look at in here during that time, so I'll be in here on Wednesday. I'm not going to be giving an official lecture. You can kind of be working on some of the stuff you're already doing. The other thing is week 8, the next coming week, right, is a big week. Like, we go over a lot of really confusing, complicated stuff. I would encourage you maybe to use some of that time next week to start watching ahead of those videos, right? So you can watch some of the videos, that way when we go through it in class, you're ready to go, right? So we are officially today starting on project 2. So if we go back to week 7, the stuff we're going to be going through today is most of the stuff in these video lessons. I'll get through as much as I can before I feel like y'all are phasing out on me, and then we'll just put the rest of it off until next class period. So some basic modeling stuff, some modeling tools that we're going to use. And we're going to model a milk carton, a coffee cup, and we're going to do some NURBS modeling to do another cup. Now, the reason we're making all of these things is because our project is going to be to do a breakfast scene. So there's a file you can download that is sort of a starter file for you. It's got some of the models already made, right? We got a cereal box made. I think there's a spoon, a bowl, a tabletop. Some people emailed me from my other class, and they're like, "Why doesn't the table have legs?" I'm like, "Because we're not going to be filming underneath the table. Right? We're looking at the top of the table. If it really bothers you, you can put some legs on it. But I would probably just show the tabletop, get in there kind of close where we can see it." So let's talk about what the actual project is. So so what you're going to be showing off in the discussion is going to be some of the modeling progress you've made. I'm not like counting the number of models. It's like, how much modeling have you done? Put that up there and let people give you feedback on it. The actual assignment is here. So if you want to see what we're working toward, it's pretty much this. Switch that again.
They make legs.
Huh? Oh, I did, didn't I? I wonder if that girl. I got an email from somebody that was like, why does the table not have legs? I don't know. I have to look and see what she actually opened up. So yeah, I probably did make some legs. It's your call if you need something like that. So to kind of look at what we've got here, right? We got those three things we're going to be looking at today: coffee cup, a glass, this milk carton. Everything else except for these napkins are already in the file. The box doesn't have textures on it yet, and if you just apply the texture to it, it would not look this good. Neither does any of these other things. It's just a sort of a basic file, right? So what we're going to be doing is I'm basically giving you a head start on the modeling, so we don't have to spend a lot of time modeling in class. But you are able to model whatever you want to, but you have to model a minimum of 3 objects. And I am going to walk you through today and tomorrow how to model those 3 objects. Let's look at the assignment. So the purpose of this project is to allow you to explore more complex modeling, effects, and gain more experience at rigging and animation. You'll use the provided breakfast scene as a starting point. You'll add the following elements to your scene: a fully textured open box of cereal, real or your own design. So you can, if you have like a character you made for visualization, like Crunchy the Robot or something like that, you can have Crunchy the Robot's Crunchy Treats, whatever. I don't know. If that's what you want to do, feel free to run with that. But I also provide a bunch of cereal box textures for you to use as well. You're going to rig an animated spoon or another element of the scene jumping at least 2 times. Your choice of at least 3 additional object models to complete your scene. You can use the coffee cup, milk carton, and glass, or you can use your own models if you want to make some other stuff. You'll animate a simulation of the cereal pouring out of the box. So I did not animate every one of those little balls. We're going to simulate those. And we're going to light and render the scene. And the way we're going to do that is using something called image-based lighting. So, man, it's a huge project. Like, really, this is probably the biggest of the 3 projects. I'm not going to say it's the most complicated, though. It's the one that has the most number of elements, right? And so, again, like we did the first project, I'm going to be working with you as we go through it. And this week, we're pretty much dedicated to getting a little bit more done in terms of modeling. Now, I will say, when it comes time for you to take that midpoint review class, and you're like, you know what, I love modeling. And I remember modeling that cereal, or modeling that coffee cup, and principles of animation. So I should concentrate in animation for if I'm wanting to do modeling. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. Really, you get to do some modeling in the animation concentration. That's why I want to cover it a little bit. But it's not the only concentration that has modeling, or even the concentration that has the most amount of modeling practice. That's probably going to be game design if you're really loving the modeling part. So, all right. Again, everything I do, I try to grade in a way that has some transparency to it. So we have a rubric, and this is going to be due on November 14th. So you'll notice that today is October 8th. So we have over a month to do this. It's going to take every ounce of it. Like it's a big, large scale project. So don't underestimate it, because that month is going to go by pretty quick. So let's look really kind of briefly here at the rubric. Can you all see that? That's a little, there we go. So, again, this 5-point scale. So hopefully some of you have seen how the grading worked for project 1 already. Whereas, if you did okay on it, maybe you got a 4. If you did excellent, you got a 5. If it was really kind of not doing that well, maybe you got a 3 or a 2 in that category. So let's say you don't do any extra models, well, you'll probably get a 1 or a 0 in that, right? But let's say you do some incredible models, you get 5, right? And all of these will add up to 25 points, right? So modeling, texture, lighting, and rendering is one category. The cereal simulation is a category. The spoon rigging and animation is a category. And the overall presentation, how did it all fit together, right? Because you could do all of that stuff really well and then render it from a quarter mile away, and I won't be able to see any of that, and that's just a bad presentation of good work, right? So all of those things are how this category kind of comes together, or how this grade comes together. That's 25 points. Basically, when I'm giving you that extra credit to go to the portfolio reviews, that's taking one of these categories. Let's say modeling, you had a 3 in there. I'd bump that 3 up to a 4, right? And that's at the end of the semester. Again, with this revision process, where you can turn in revisions anytime you want to, you have the opportunity to do that just by making the project better, right? So what I would say is do as many revisions as you can, and then what you didn't give time to get that revision for, that's where I'll give you this extra credit on it. So, questions on the project, on portfolio review tonight, on anything in the universe?
What's your favorite kind of ice cream?
That's a good one, actually. Very solid question. So right now it's actually on sale. Bluebell is on sale at Walgreens. The Bluebell cookies and cream. I think it's gonna have to be that. Although I will say Bluebell strawberry with vanilla is in a close second. Yes.
This is also kind of another joke question.
Ice cream related.
Is Radbird like your favorite, or one of your favorite?
Everything. Except I haven't watched that one that he did that was like live action, Tomorrowland. Has anybody watched that?
I have.
No, I didn't know it was you.
I haven't watched that yet, but I'll give it a shot. Okay, so on to the actual thingies. I probably shouldn't have closed that.
The movie was basically an excuse to use all the special effects from Star Wars. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I'm gonna open that back up. Okay, so I want to show you really quick what is in this folder here. This content folder, breakfast files. You've probably already seen how to download some of this. Click that, download. I'll put this on my desktop right now.
It has links.
Does it?
Yep.
I'll have to email that girl back. Let's see what she. I don't know what she's seeing here.
She deleted her legs. It's a floating coffee
That
table.
is a chance.
Give me one of those coffee tables that like folds in half so you can store it on like the side of the wall.
So I have my breakfast folder. I downloaded the zip. I right-clicked on it, went to 7-zip or extract all, whatever, to pull this folder out. Right? And so now there's my project. So this is where I'm going to be working. So let's go ahead and open Maya because I know you're just itching to double-click on that file. Don't do it. Don't give in to the temptation. Open Maya instead. Am I getting audio on this? Yes, I am. Okay. So you don't have to open this just yet if you don't want to. There's a way we can merge these models together as we get them done. But I'm probably just going to go ahead and work on mine in here. So actually, pull this over here.
I just emailed him, so once I get the deal, I'll buy that.
It's pretty good. I got a lot done in my. I've been working on our house because we bought a house recently, so we got a lot of stuff painted with the help of my sister and her wife. So
What did you think?
a hallway and a bathroom, and then we hung up a bunch of stuff on the wall.
What colors?
Oh, they're very bright. I have to bring pictures. I can't describe colors very well. Okay, we're in Maya. I'm gonna open up my breakfast scene. What do I do first? Cry while setting your project. File, set project, desktop, breakfast, set. That's going to be very, very important in this project. There's a lot of stuff that's going to end up in that project folder. Yes.
If you set a project, can you reset the project to a different?
Yes.
Because the way I did it just now, instead of just clicking on the breakfast folder, I clicked into the breakfast folder. I didn't select anything inside of it, but I just.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you go to you go file, set project, and let's say you double click it like that, and then you hit set. That's still the same because I don't have anything selected. That's still the same as just selecting it. Now, if I selected scenes, it would mess it up, right? But yeah, if I hit set like that, we're still in the project. Now, one of the ways you can tell is if I go to File, Open Scene, and I'm like, I don't remember if I set my project or not. Well, one, it immediately took me to the scenes folder of my project. But the other thing is I could click on this workspace root right here, and you'll see that that's where it's set right now. So that's one of the ways you can tell. Yes.
So how, I don't know if you can answer this, but how much space do you think this project will take up? Of course you say that.
I would allot at least a gig for it. The reason for that is we are going to be rendering out of Arnold, and I'm going to encourage you to render as EXRs, and those get a little bit big. Also, we're going to be doing a simulation, and in the process of doing a simulation, we have to create something called a cache, which is kind of like a sampling of the simulation, so you always get the same result. So like this, the cereal, one of the cereal balls doesn't go bouncing off the table. Once you get it to simulate perfectly, you want to freeze that kind of. Yes. Oh yeah. Come on to that.
When I try to set my project, it says that I do not see a project definition.
What that's probably looking for, are you trying to set it in the breakfast folder?
Yeah.
So what that's probably looking for is, if you'll notice in the breakfast folder, it's got this workspace mail. It's probably looking for that. If it doesn't have one, just does it give you the option to create a new one? Yeah, let me come as that check. So yes, do you have a?
I was wondering, are we gonna use the render form for this one?
I will introduce you to the vendor farm. I'm not 100% sure we're going to. Yes.
It'll take a little less time.
Spoon versus fork.
There's other breakfast folder inside. You can also.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm trying to think.
Okay. So we did have a question that is a slippery slope that I will eventually get to. It was about the render farm. Are we going to use it? How many of you have heard of the render farm? Okay. So I will guide you to how to try to use that. Like how I phrase that? I will guide you how to try. You are allowed to. You already have access to it. There's actually up in the student resources folder.
Did we have access to it whenever we did our?
We did. I could have shown you that, but I was worried some heads would explode. So I was trying to take it a bite at a time. So if we go to ETSU E3 under DIGM students and then student resources, there's a. See it? Render farm instructions right there. And so there's a video that will walk you through most of it. What usually happens is you go through that video and it doesn't work, and then you go find me or Marty and we try to help you work out the details of it, and then it doesn't work, and then we finally figure it out, and then on your third time it'll work, but halfway through it'll fail. And you'll be like, why did it fail? And you're like, oh, it must be because I left that thing in there. And then you'll fix that. And then on the fourth time, it'll work. Right? I hate to say it, but that's sort of like, that's everybody's experience with it. But after that fourth time, you're like, I'm never going back. Right? It's always the, because what happens is some of these frames are probably going to take a minute a frame, 2 minutes a frame to render, and you got 200 frames. Like, it's either camping out here all night or figuring out the render farm, or both. And it's very beneficial because basically what the render farm is all of the unused computers in the building will render it for you, right? So instead of one computer rendering all 200 images, you can use 100 computers and let them render 2 images each, right? And then it just puts it up on the server. So that video will walk you through it. I'm not going to force anybody to do that because sometimes figuring out the render farm takes longer than just rendering it on one computer. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my base models here. There it is. Yeah, it's totally got legs. Yeah. I'm not going to address that one. Okay. So I have all these models that already exist. We're going to talk more about these later, but right now, I just wanted to get into this scene to start working. So I'm going to select everything, and in my, what is this? There we go. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer by selecting all of it, clicking this first button, and now I can hide it, turn it on and off, right? I'll call this okay. So I'm doing that partially just so I have sort of a scale to go off of. Now, I will say I've the videos that are up on D2L, they're going to be very beneficial. And I'm going to sort of do we'll say the Cliff Notes version of these. I haven't watched those videos today. I'm going to kind of click through them to make sure I don't skip anything as I'm going along. But what I would say is after we've done this in class, it wouldn't hurt to just sort of listen along to those as we go. So let's start with something easy, like a box. Okay, done. Right. So this is why a lot of people like modeling, is because it's very gratifying very quickly, right? I got a thing. By clicking a button, I'm a magician, right? Like there was nothing, now there's a something.
I hate how accurate that is.
Right. So modeling feels good. You get that feedback loop of accomplishment. The problem that most people run into is very early on, you realize it's easy to make a thing. It's hard to make a thing look exactly the way you want, right? Remember modeling those cars? It was difficult, right? So a few things I would like to look at today is a couple of other modeling tools, just to let you know that the few that we used are not all of the ones that exist, right? Now some of these you all have probably already found by mistake or by just playing around with this. The first one is, we call it Smooth Mesh Preview, right? If I have this selected and I hit 3, my box becomes a sphere, right? I'm like Houdini, man. Look at that. Here's the problem. That box is actually still a box. What we have is a very smoothed box, right? A very rounded box. But this is still made up out of those same polygons, right? Remember when I said, let's go to, my mouse is acting up. Mouse. If I go to face, I choose that face, or if I go to edge, I choose that edge. And I said an edge can't be bent or like curved inside of Maya, except for if I hit 3, it appears that it can, right? Like that curve, that edge is kind of curved now. What Maya is actually really doing is sort of behind the scenes, it's subdividing that into more edges and rounding them off. In fact, if you kind of look in there, you can even still see like the faceting on that, like those little sharp angles, right? So if I hit 1, go back here, really what Maya is doing is, if I were to select this object and go to Mesh, I can choose Smooth, and it will smooth our object, right? So now it's more rounded, and it's got more faces. And if I turn that number up to something like 3, you'll see it gets even more round. Now all of those edges are still straight, right? But that's what Maya is doing kind of on the fly. So I can see what this object would look like if I smoothed it, right? So I'm going to undo that. So again, the quickest way to do that, just so I can kind of go back and forth, is 3, 1, right? And so that'll allow me to model a blocky version. We call it box modeling. It'll allow me to model a blocky version and then see what a more smoothed version would look like just by hitting 1 key. Right? Now you can also see sort of both of them at the same time if you hit 2. Now, the reason this is important is because like this is one of the ways that people model. Recognize if you're going to render, I can hit 3 and render with Arnold, and it will render as if it were the smooth version of that model, right? If I were to try to export this out into a video game engine, though, it will not export out my smoothing, right? And if I wanted to smooth it, I have to actually add all of those faces in there. So let's kind of talk about that. The reason my box is going all the way to this rounded sphere is because it is that one long edge, right? This is just 6 faces. All right. Now, if I go back to the way I created this, right? I could go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube, and choose my options box. You'll see that a lot of these options here, there's a lot of options here to add like additional divisions, right? Right now it's just 1 division by 1 division by 1 division. I'm not going to create a new box, but what I'll show you is this box still has the node that was used to create this box, right? When I go to that options box. All of that information is still here in this input node, this polycube 5. So we got this subdivision height, width, depth right here, 1, 1, 1, right? And if I just highlight all of those and type 3, you'll see that I get a different subdivisions of this, right? This usually only works or works best when you first create the model. After I make any major changes to it, it really kind of messes it up. To show you that as an example, if I were to go in here and like say grab this face and extrude it, you know, the same way we do with like the top of the car, right? Something like this. If I go in there and was like, oh, you know what? I forgot to put more subdivisions in it, and I type in 3. That's not what I wanted, right? So it's something you need to do kind of early on in this process. So before I've extruded anything, I could go in here and add like 3 to this. Now watch this. If I click off of this, now if I hit 3 to smooth this, I get a different result, right? So that roundingness that is happening, the reason it turned it into a full sphere is because there was just one edge and one edge, and it was trying to soften those 2 edges as much as it can. Now I have these little edges in the middle that are kind of helping it hold its shape, right? And you can kind of see how this works. If I go back in here to my Polysphere 5, if I go in here to my height divisions, right? I'm just going to highlight the word and then middle click out here. You can see I can start increasing that number, and it gets sort of sharper at the top, right? Or if I go down more, get more rounded, right? Now, this doesn't mean I have to have a ton of them in there if I want a smooth or a sharp edge at the top. It just means the distance between this edge and this edge needs to be shorter, or it needs to be smaller, right? So if I go in here and just move this edge up really kind of tight to that, hit 3 again, now I get sort of a sharper edge along the top and more rounded at the bottom, right? I can even round that more if I wanted to. Does that make sense? So this is how poly modeling works, right? We are able to sort of create this that doesn't look like our final model, but if I smoothed it, it would, right? And so we're sort of making the blocked out version that will soften as we smooth it. And you'll see that it rounds it off. Just making sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah. All right, I think we're good there. So now there's a handful of other tools I'd like to kind of briefly look at as we go along here. So the first one you all are kind of familiar with. I'm going to just create a new box here. Box. Subdivision heights, right? So you all are pretty much familiar already with extrude, right? Extrude works with all of the sub-object types, edge, vertex, and face, but usually face is the one that works best, right? Yes?
Sorry, but I need to return my camera
Yeah, that's cool. So extrude is, I need this to feel like this face has kind of grown up out of there. Anybody remember the shortcut key for extrude? Huh?
Shift.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, you can hold shift and just sort of pull it out to extrude, right? The other one is Control E, and that will turn on your extrude tool, and you can extrude up. Right? So let's try something a little different though. Let's say what I needed was something that, like let's say I needed each of these faces to kind of extrude up a little bit, right? So obviously before I go into that, let's try one more thing. So Control E, there are a few extra things in this extrude, right? I can pull it up like this, but you'll also see that I have this offset here, and that will make it sort of wider. Or I could use these scale features on here to do a similar thing. The other thing is you'll notice that there are divisions in here, right? And divisions are going to give us extra spans in that extrude. Now that's cool because if I offset that, all of those divisions kind of scale with it. Right? So that is one thing I can do. And again, if we hit 3 on that, we're going to get a much different result than we get with 1. Now if I were to grab multiple faces at a time and extrude them, by default, it's going to extrude this as if it's all one big face, right? Control E, I pull this out, does this, right? And that's because this keep faces together is on, right? And the way you can tell that is if I hit 3, so that all feels like one mesh, they're all sort of glued together in the center. Now if I uncheck that keep faces together and turn it to off, I get this, right? So that you can kind of see the difference of whatever it is you're wanting to happen in that extrude.
Your jokes just don't get better.
So let's go ahead and move this one off to the side in case we need to come back to it for a reason. New box. Okay. So let's say I needed something way more complex than that, right? Let's say I needed this thing to have like a tail or an antenna that is like a cord, right, attached to it. Well, I realized that if I were to go in here and grab this face, right, kind of extrude it a few times, maybe add some divisions to it, right? When I smooth that, that kind of feels like a cord or a cable coming out of it, right? But the problem with that is if I want it to be really windy, that's just a lot of work. Let's say I'm trying to get it over here to plug into this thing, right? But I also want it to sort of zigzag through the air. I can hold down Shift, or I could use that Control E again, right? Maybe move it a little bit, maybe rotate it a little bit. Like it's just going to take forever to zigzag around through there. So I'm going to show you a trick to that. Again, now this is something I will point out. I'm in smooth mode right now, right? Sometimes people will be in unsmooth mode, they'll extrude, and they'll be like, wait, I didn't want to do that. It's all right, I'll just click off. Well, recognize I did extrude, I just didn't move it, right? So you got to watch out for that when that happens. So undo. So let's say I wanted this to sort of zigzag around and plug into the top of this thing, right? What I'm going to do for my front view is I'm going to draw a curve. So we haven't talked too much about curves yet, but under this curves and surfaces, this is very similar to curves in Illustrator or any Photoshop, any other program. It's a CV curve or an EP curve. I'm going to do sort of the quick, easy one, which is, what's this one? EP curve, right? What this allows me to do is just start clicking buttons. So I'll start somewhere near the top of this, click, click, and just going to let me start creating kind of this windy. See where I'm going with this? Okay, and when I hit enter, now I have this completed curve. Now this is made up of sub-objects as well. If I right-click on this and go to Control Vertices, you'll see I get these little curves that are floating out here, and I can sort of change the shape of it a little bit to get the shape I really want it to be. Right? So let's say it's that. That's the shape I want right there. Go back to object mode. So here's why this is a cool feature, is now that I've created that, I can go into my face mode. I can click the face, I can hold shift and select the curve, and as long as they're both selected, when I hit Control E now, I get a different result. All right? In fact, if I look at one, you'll see what it did is it extruded my face over to the end of that curve. All right?
Well, what if you extruded the?
So I'll go back and do it one more time. So I just select the curve. I can hold shift. Select the face. So I just have to have those two things selected. And then extrude, Control E. And all it did is it extruded it all the way to the end of my curve. So that's not necessarily what I wanted, though. I wanted it to zigzag around this curve. The reason it didn't do that, though, is because it's just one division, right? So it actually is zigzagging around that curve. We just don't have enough information in this model to be able to see it. So what I'm going to do is go to divisions here, start cranking up that number. You'll see that as I do, I get a pretty neat result. Try something higher, like 50. Yes?
Which tool did you use to draw the curve?
I use the EP curve tool, but any of these curve tools will work. So once I have that, that's pretty cool. Now I want to show you something. You remember, there's probably been a couple of times, I think we've done this. If we haven't, we will later, that we've deleted history on an object, or we've at least froze the transformations. Well, if you go in here, you'll see I still have that curve. That curve still exists, right? And remember how we were able to edit it with the control vertices? Well, we still can, but since I use that curve to create this extrusion, it's also going to adjust our model, right? And so I can go in here and sort of refine and clean up this shape to make it sort of whatever it is I want it to be. Now, after so that's really cool that we're able to do that. The thing that's frustrating is, like, let's say, all right, now I'm going to animate it, right? And I grab this and I start moving it, and then I really mess up my model, right? So the way we get rid of that connection is basically what's happening is Maya's remembering the history of how this object was created. So to get rid of that connection, I just have to delete that history. I just go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. And so now, if I edit that curve, Maya doesn't remember that that's the curve I used to generate it, right? In fact, I could go ahead and just delete that curve now if I wanted to. And this works really good because now this is just a model, right? If I hit 3, I get this interesting little hose that connects the two. Right? So, I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to show you all of the modeling tools today. Here's what I would say. If there's a modeling feature, right, and your question in your head is, can Maya do blank? The answer is yes, 3 different ways, right? Like, whatever the question is, yes, 3 different ways, right? There's at least, there's so many different ways to model inside of here. What I would encourage you to do is spend some time exploring some of these modeling tools. And so I'll show you a couple just to give you an idea of what to even be looking for. But most of them are going to be found under either Mesh, Edit Mesh, or Mesh Tools. You'll also find a bunch of modeling tools under this tab right here. It's this little bitty hammer on a box here in the top corner. See it up there? If we click that, that's going to open up our modeling toolkit. So this is really handy because if I have this selected, right now I'm in object mode. I can go to vertex, edge, face, or even this like multi mode where I can select a mix of all of them, I think. Is that what this is? Oh no, that's UVs, my bad. It's multi-component mode that'll let me select an edge and a vertex all at once. Right? Yeah, that's what we're going to do with the cereal boxes later. So.
We haven't learned that yet.
Yeah. So the question was this right here. This is how we can move our UVs, and don't worry this week about what UVs are. That's what we're going to be worrying about in week 8. The UVs are how we would wrap a texture around a model, right? So there's a lot of tools in here. We can look at a few of them, but again, everything that's over here you'll also be able to find in the menus and a lot more. These are just some really commonly used tools, right? Such as smooth or bevel or extrude or bridge, right? So let's try one here. Is the multi-cut tool right here. So again, let's just create a new box. Just box happy. Channel box layer editor. And add that back up to like 3, right? So let's say what I really wanted to be able to extrude was a triangle shape out of the top here, right? Well, right now with my current configuration, that would be really hard to get. The multi-cut tool allows us to chop pieces out of this, right? Basically, I can start at a vertex, I can click, I can go to any other edge, and I can just start cutting shapes into this, right? And so now, if I wanted to go over here to face, and select all of these, and hit Control E, right? I can start getting a little bit more of a complex shape out of that. Now keep in mind, again, if you plan on smoothing that, you're going to get a different result, right? But I think I just inadvertently did the chair assignment from game design. So, so don't tell anybody. No, obviously your chair is going to be a lot harder than that, right? So you can cut whatever shapes you need out of that. The thing you got to be careful with this is, as I've said before, you want to make sure that you're being clean with the cuts you're making, right? So one of the things I want to watch out for is, let's say I did something like this, right? So that doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, except for a couple of things. That's a triangle now, and I'm okay with triangles, but this face right here now has 5 sides, right? This one has 4, this one has 5. And so that's not too bad, but this one over here has 5 as well, right? And if I were to smooth this, I get this weird pinching that happens here, right? You see how it like kind of starts to deform the mesh in a weird way, right? Maya has a hard time figuring out how to subdivide faces that are higher than 5 sides or higher than 4 sides. It calls them n-gons. So the same way you would think of n as what you're trying to solve for in an algebra equation, n can be any number higher than 4, right? An n-gon, that's actually sign language for n. An n-gon is any number of sides higher than 4, right? And those are generally seen as not a good idea in modeling, particularly if your model is going to deform. Now, if it's not going to deform, it may not be a big deal, but it's still just a good habit to learn to recognize those. Okay. So let's look at a couple other things here. Okay, yeah, so this is something that is just kind of a pet peeve of mine. So since I'm the teacher, I get to talk about it. Create a new box here. And so something, yes?
I have a question. Isn't there a way that we can turn all our n-gons to polygons?
Oh, like a way to change the n-gons to like triangles?
Yeah.
Probably.
It works.
more than or quads or whatever. Yeah, maybe. I mean, one of the ways you could do it is probably, I haven't really tried this very much, mesh quadrangulate. That didn't seem to work. In theory, that should chop that up. The other way to do it is just sort of the manual way of doing it. Go to your multi-cut tool and say from there to there, and then divide this up into triangles as well. Now, again, it's not 100% important, But you'll also see why this is a problem if I go to insert an edge loop. So if I go to mesh tools, insert an edge loop, and I tried to insert it here, like it doesn't know what to do, right? It doesn't know if I want that edge loop to continue around this way or to go down this way, right? So again, it's not something I would like lose any sleep over right now. Just kind of tuck that in the back of your brain and say, in the future, I'm going to try to reduce how many 5-sided or more polygons that I have. And some of the little weird elements that may happen in some of your models are because we're having some of those. So, new model. So another thing that really just kind of bothers me is if I look at this, right? Like, look at that edge, right? Like, you could like slice tomatoes with that edge. It's so sharp. Like, look at that. Like, you don't want to touch it. Right? There are very few things in this world that actually has that sharp of an edge. Even this desk, if you look at these desks, there's a really subtle rounded edge on the desks, right? And I know like the instinct is, I'm going to model this desk, made a box, done, right? No, like that edge, that little beveled edge, especially if you are setting in an angle where you can see it, it catches light, right? Like there's a little bit of a highlight that goes down that edge. And that's not happening on this box, right? And so that feels fake to me. So there's a way that we can make that happen. If I select this edge and I go to bevel, that's going to take that one edge and divide it in half based off of a distance. Now that's too big of a distance, so if I take that down to something much smaller, let's say 0.01, turn my number pad on, 0.01, right? Then I get this really subtle highlight there, right? And so now that feels a little more realistic, right? The other thing I can do, let's just do that with all of them. I can grab all of my edges, do that bevel. I'm going to take that fraction down again to like 0.01. Maybe even go a little bit higher, 0.02. What's that look like? There we go. Now, if you go in here and look, it's just a flat edge, but I can add more divisions, more segments in that. And as I do, it starts to round it off. See, that's kind of getting a rounded edge there. And so now that feature just feels a little bit more realistic. Yes?
I'm sorry, how did you get to that menu again?
The bevel menu? It's actually this button right here.
Oh, right there.
You can also go under, I think it's Edit Mesh, and I think Bevel is in there. So again, look at all these. All of these are different modeling tools that we could use. Right? What I would say to try, open up a fresh version of Maya and just start playing with some of these and see if you can figure out what they do. Right? Some of these are going to be tools like I don't use, but you are like, that's very valuable to me. Right? So I'm going to show you one other option, or one other tool. It's kind of a couple of different ways that we can deal with this. If I create a box, as I have a tendency to do, and add some divisions to that. Right. Let's say we have something like this. Right? Now, well, look at this first. It's very much in our nature to assume that this is a solid box, right? Like when I look at this table, I don't imagine that this is a thin chocolatey shell that is hollow, right? It's like the Easter bunny you got when you were a kid, right? The little like the chocolate Easter bunny, and you're like, this is a mound of chocolate, and you bit into it, and the whole thing is hollow, right? That's how things are in Maya, right? It's like the never-ending story. You know, the nothingness has ate the inside. That was part 2, though. Or, no, that was in the first one. So that's actually what's happening here. This model is not a solid object. It's not a platonic solid. If you hit delete in there, you'll see it's just this thin shell of faces, right? Let me grab that object again so I can focus in there. So that means what we're really trying to do is make this contiguous shell, right? Because if I smooth that out, like Maya doesn't really know what to do with that, right? The other thing is nothing is actually that paper thin, right? So maybe you have something like this and you need it to feel like it has a hole in it. Well, one of the things, this is a trick I will do sometimes, is I'll just grab every face and then hit Control E and just extrude that out just a little bit. And what I've gotten is a little bit of thickness all the way through it. So now it's an inside and outside shell, right? So again, like if I were to go here though and look, like if I delete this face, there's another face right there on the other side, right? And I have to delete both of those to be able to see through, right? So again, it's still just a hollow shell. I'm going to go back to before I extruded that. So sometimes you're able to see through that shell and you're like, wait, I need to fill that. I need that to not be where I can see inside my model, right? Or maybe I have two different models and I need to connect those together, right? There are reasons to need to fill these open gaps like this. And so I'm going to show you a couple of them. The first one's pretty easy. Mesh, fill hole. There, it plugged it, right? It works if it's more of a complicated one. If Maya doesn't automatically find it, I have to go in here and select all of the edges around that hole and then do mesh, fill hole. Now the problem with that is, again, that's more than a 5-sided face, right? And so if I were to smooth this object, you're going to see I get this really weird pinching thing happening in the middle. The way we can fix that is to go back to that multi-cut tool and just cut across here from there to there, enter, from there to there, enter. Right. So let's do that again. Let's go ahead and delete those faces again. Actually, I'm just going to hit Control Z until I get back to where I was. There we go. So there's a couple of other ways we can fix this. One of them is the bridge tool. So the way you think of bridging is like you're bridging a gap, right? You have to, connect a gap of two faces or two edges, right? So I could do that pretty easily. I could go to edge. You'll see if I just choose this edge and then this edge across from each other, and I hit this bridge button, it just connects those two, right? Or if I went all three of these to all three of these, I think this will work. If I hit bridge, connects them, right? Now the cool thing is I could actually still make divisions in that if I wanted to, but if I did that, we get a little bit of an issue. So let's say I made a division there, right? And then I selected these edges and picked them up. See, that's not connected there. Now, if I didn't make that division and I grabbed that edge and picked it up, you see that it is still kind of connected. Right? So, lots of modeling tools in here. Let me look ahead really quick on this video and see if I'm forgetting anything. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this too. So there's still one more way we could use that bridge, right? A couple more ways. If I grab these two faces, Control E, extrude those up, right? And I went ahead and deleted those two faces, right? Let's say I had something like this, right? And I wanted to connect these two together into like one handle. So I could use a couple of those tools we just used, right? I could grab these two, do bridge, and do that a few times. Actually, another shortcut key that may be helpful, G will repeat the last tool you used. So since the last tool I used was this bridge tool, if I hit G, it'll just continue to do that. So now when I hit 3, get this nice little dumbbell look, right? I want to go back a few steps. So there's another way we can do this too, and that's called the target weld tool right here, right? So target weld is I can grab one sub-object and drag it, and it will connect it to another sub-object. So I'm going to go ahead and go to vertex so you can see this. If I drag this, click that, and drag it over to there, it will target weld those together. I can kind of quickly do that. Again, that's over here in this target weld. And again, all of those can be found in the menu too. And so now I can go back to these vertices, rework them. Now again, that may not be enough information to get that handle the way you want it to look. So what you can do is you can just go back to your mesh tools and start inserting edge loops. Insert an edge loop, move that around, just start getting the model that I want out of this. Now the final thing is, yes?
Is there a way to like quickly, like say you wanted those two edge loops at the top of your handle to be like the same? Is there any way in Maya to like edit them so that they're like the same?
Oh, like in a mirror from each other? At this point, I've kind of, where I've gotten this sort of sloppy about it, probably not. One of the ways you could do, or not easily, one of the things you could do though, is I could just go ahead and Control Delete to get rid of that edge. Bless you. Go ahead and grab this edge, and I could zero this out. So this is a couple of quick tools. If I get my front view, if I hold down V, actually let's do it this way instead. Before I do that, I'm going to hit R and just start scaling those two toward the center. So by doing that over and over again, it's going to flatten them out. And then if I want them to be dead center, I can move that. Maybe I'll double click that again so we get it on that. Why does that not work? Oh. Okay. So once I get that sort of flattened out, right, I can hold down V, and V will snap, I'm sorry, hold down X, and X will snap all of these elements to a grid point, right? So if I hold down X and snap it, it's going to snap it to a grid point, right? And that's going to allow me to keep that kind of aligned in the center. And then I could probably do something like the bevel to get those equally spaced, right? The easier way to do it is if I would have started this, instead of grabbing both sides and extruding them up, if I would have just used symmetry when I was modeling it, it probably would have kept it much more symmetrical. So actually there are some tricks to be able to get that symmetry back, but ideally you just kind of think about it as you're going. I guess at this point what I could do is Control Delete these two, and then turn on my symmetry object X, and then mesh tools, insert edge loop right there. Start getting more symmetrical shapes out of it. So.
How many objects extra do you do this week?
So for the project, we're going to do 3 extra objects. So yeah, and I'm going to kind of, how are we doing on time?
Is the cup included?
Yeah, the cup, the mug, or the milk jug are the ones that we're going to look at. So.
Do we already need to have like the textures on them?
I mean, if you want to start looking ahead at the textures, you can. But really, it's just whatever for the discussion this week. It's just whatever you've gotten done modeling wise. And so if you've gotten more than that done, and if you're enjoying the modeling, feel free to just keep modeling. Make as many things as you want. Okay, last little modeling tool I'm going to show you. Let's say I have this donut, right? And let's go ahead and just use something that already existed. One of these over here, right? Let's say right up here at the top of all of this, I wanted to connect this donut to this ring, right? And I want it to all seem like one big piece. So I'm going to do that in a couple of ways here. Let me go ahead and grab my channel box. I'm going to reduce the number of segments so it's easier to see. Something like that, right?
This looks like one of those little kids' toys where they take the little beads and they move them to the other side.
Yep. So I'm going to grab this face right here, and I'm just going to extrude it up a little bit. Control E, move that up. And then I'm going to delete that face. Right? So now I have this open-ended face there, right? And then on the bottom of my model, I'm going to delete that face too on my torus. So now I have this open gap here and this open gap here. But they're 2 separate models, right? I want them to be one model. So in my outliner here, you'll see that if I go to Mesh combine, it's going to combine them into one model, right? But it's also going to leave these two nodes here. And those are the old versions of those, which means I could still grab that and move it if I wanted to by itself. But if I grab this, it's the two models. So what I like to do is I could delete history here, delete by type history, just to get rid of those other two nodes. And so now all this is one mesh. It's just not connected together. So I can use my target weld to weld these vertices together the way I want them. And so now when I hit 3, it's all one mesh, right? Okay. I know that's a lot of tools. Here's the thing that I think is important about learning this stuff. You don't have to memorize all of those tools. I don't memorize all those tools. I actually kind of just remember they exist, and then I use logic to find them when I need them. Like some of them I know where they're at. Like I know smooth is under mesh, but I can't remember if insert edge loop was under mesh tools or edit mesh. I usually have to look for them. I just remember that insert edge loop is a thing that I can use, right? Just like I have no idea where my 7/16 socket is in my garage either. I just know that I probably have one, so I'm going to go rooting around and find it. Yeah.
I've ended up to where I won't remember like if edge loop is in like mesh tools or whatever, but I'll know that mesh tools is a shorter column.
Yeah, so you can dig through it quicker.
So I'll be like, okay.
So I think that's the way to think of all of this, right? You may not remember what the name of that little curve editor thing is that you used in the bouncing ball exercise, but you remember it exists, so you can go looking for it, right? And then you just use that as a tool. So that's what I'd like you to take away from this. So what time is this class end? 2? This is about an hour. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I feel like it's hard watching somebody work along on these projects in class and you trying to keep up, right? So I'm gonna kind of ask for your feedback on this. There's two ways we could go. I could keep lecturing and I could model probably about half of the milk carton, and then we could come back next class period and I could do the coffee cup and the glass. Or I could assign you those last 3 videos to watch and be working on them in your own time. That way you don't really have to wait on me and try to follow along with me. What's your thoughts there? Yeah.
Just be transparent. We don't have to actually model a milk carton if we don't want to model a milk carton.
Oh no, yeah, no. You can have 3 of any kind. Like if you're doing a post-apocalyptic breakfast scene, which is absolutely on the table, and you're like, you know what? He's eating this breakfast with a giant survival knife, and that's what you're wanting to model instead. Yeah. It needs to be a substantial model. It's not like there are 3 marbles on the table. Like it needs to be something that's an actual model. Yeah, you can do anything you want to. I use these 3 as if modeling is not your thing, or if you're just wanting to use these 3 because you're walking along with it, you can. And we can use a lot of these tools we explored today on that. So what do you think? Do you want to watch the videos and work along with those, or do you want me to sort of do those in class?
But when you watch the videos and you still don't understand,
Yeah.
next time.
So I guess what I was going to say is that there's a little bit of a benefit to each side of it. The watching the videos benefit is you can work on it on your own pace. You can work on it tonight or tomorrow or whatever, right? Maybe you get a second wind after watching the portfolio reviews. And you're like, I'm going to go back and model, and you can start it now instead of having to wait on you. You said, what was that?
I said, I feel good.
Oh, I was like, unlikely, Mark. So you get that option. The downside is, and the other plus side is the exercise or whatever you're doing in the discussion board is due on Thursday night. So I'm probably not going to be able to get through all 3 models in the next hour without like you just falling asleep. So that gives you kind of that leeway to kind of work on that. The other plus side is that means next class period will be open work time for you to be getting those things done and a little bit more time for me to answer questions instead of me being walking through it. So y'all okay with that option? I feel like what I'm doing is like, I'm not going to teach today, just go watch the video. But I feel like there's more useful ways of me using this time in class other than just repeating the same thing that's in the video that already exists. So let's try that, and that way you can come in with your questions next class period that I can help you work through. Does that sound good? What that also means is that's really the major amount of stuff I was planning on covering today. So if you go up to D2L, you're going to see we had the inputs and smoothing, the modeling tools, and then videos 3, 4, and 5 are just creating those 3 models, right? So they're actually all, like the first 2 are just 2 different ways of using polygon modeling. Now the third one, I will give us a little bit of a preface to this, is something different. It's called NURBS modeling. No, I did not make that word up. Somebody in the 90s made that word up. Anybody know what NURBS stands for? It's actually an acronym.
What's the S
Stands for Non-Uniform Rational Bezier Splines. Only Alex Trebek cares. So it's a type of mathematical equation that allows a surface to be generated. So I'll show you sort of the difference between a NURBS and a polygon model. So a polygon model, you're going to find all of these under these poly models, right? We've already kind of seen, let's do a sphere instead. We've already kind of seen that a polygon model is made up of all of these flat faces, edges, vertices, right? And if I move that edge is always straight, this shape is always flat, right? So this is kind of a little bit of a history lesson too. Back in the good old days, computers were slow, right? Like it would take all of 5 minutes to load that dancing baby GIF, and like everything was slower, right? And for some reason, despite what is that called? Where the technology doubles every 7 years? What is that? Anyway, despite that fact already existing, people just assumed computers were never going to be fast enough to be able to handle like smoothed objects, right? They would have never believed that we could do that. So they came up with a different way of calculating faces, which is called NURBS, right? And so if I created a NURBS sphere, you'll see that they really don't look that much different, except for when I select them, this is made up of a whole bunch of straight edges. This is made up of fewer curved edges. Right? And if I right click on this, my control vertices are sort of floating out here in space. And if I grab that and move it, it's like it's a much more rounded, softer shape, right? So this is sort of the old way of generating surfaces that were complex before computers were fast enough to handle a lot of polygon faces, right? Well, now they're able to handle a lot of polygon faces, and NURBS are less relevant in entertainment modeling. NURBS are still pretty relevant in terms of precision modeling, right? If you need a curve to change at a very specific rate of change, like per micron or whatever, NURBS are very important for that. CAD, product design or industrial design still uses a lot of that. And if you're going to be fabricating something that they're going to 3D print and create a mold so they can put that on the space shuttle and launch it into space, accuracy is very important. if you're creating something because you want it to look pretty, aesthetic is more important, right? So NURBS are sort of the way that you can create more accurate models. And in my opinion, which is one person's opinion, they're much less relevant nowadays. So why am I teaching you about them? And why does Maya still have them? The answer is because they're actually pretty quick to generate certain things, right? So if I needed an interesting shape, there's a couple of different. I'm trying to come up with a good example. So I'm just going to create a couple of these rings, right? Control D, something like this. Control vertices are. Say I wanted. Something else. Oh. So that was a pretty quick way of generating that shape, right? Don't worry about what I did. It's actually in the video a little bit more in detail. The thing about that is that's still a NURBS model. So then I would probably want to convert that to polygons just because polygons are more versatile, right? It's really hard to get additional edge loops in this, right? That's much easier in polygons. So one of the things that you are going to see in here that's really kind of neat, if I were to go like my front view, I'm just going to quickly draw out a shape. There, right? So that's pretty neat, right? If I click this revolve button, I can get a pretty neat shape out of that quick, right? So that's why NURBS are handy, is that's a very quick way of generating this thing, right? But then to add much else to it, I usually have to go back to polygons, personally. There are ways you can add more detail in NURBS, but I don't really see a benefit for it. I go to Edit, and then, Modify, Convert, and it says NURBS to polygons. And I go over this in the video, so you don't have to write it down, but it's quads, general, and then this bottom one, per span number of isoparms. And then I hit tessellate, and so now I have a polygon version of my NURBS model. Now again, why this is really kind of cool is that curve we made right there. I can still go to my control vertices of that and change that on my NURBS model, and you'll see it also changes it on my polygon model, right? So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do by leveraging this history. But once you're done, you can select this, edit, delete by type history, and now it's just a polygon model that I can go in here and grab faces and extrude. Right. Yes?
Did you make a rig like of a person and turn it into a NURB? Would it still be rigged correctly? Like just the model itself?
Yeah.
And then could you convert it into polygon and then create a sort of weird 3D double motion thing, like in Annihilation?
Double what now?
Like, if the rig moved her arm, with the model that's polygon now moved her arm as if it was rigged?
Mm-hmm. But there's other ways of doing that too. Though. If you're trying to get if you're getting multiple instances of a character, there's ways you can do that a little easier too. It's just literally a duplicate of that character that's placed all over the place. So I'm gonna kind of stop it there, give you the rest of the class to keep watching the videos, or maybe you're like, nope, I'm starving, I'm gonna go to cookout. How many of you think you're gonna be at the portfolio reviews tonight? So I can. That's a good question. Asked which ones are tonight. Let me show you the list. This is the most recent list that I got. I don't know that it's absolutely accurate about who is going to be there. because they may have to shift some of those around. Oh goodness, where we at? Let's look up share. There we go. So this is the list of people going tonight. The first three are game design. The rest of them, if it's still in this order, is going to be visual effects or a combination of visual effects and animation. Brandon Frangipani and Robert Law, they are both kind of somewhat visual effects, somewhat effects animation. And so I think they're both animation concentrations, but they're doing more of the effects animation, like the cereal pouring out. So you'll get to see some examples of that. Anything with Livingston's name on it is more visual effects stuff. You'll see that most of the people I'm working with are going to be going kind of early tomorrow. Anything with Emma's names on it is game design. And Zane Palmore is also animation, but he's more of technical animation, like rigging and stuff like that. So I would say this is a smaller group of people than usual, so you're not going to see quite as much variety. But there should be some interesting stuff, and I just encourage you to come out for it. So, somebody else had a question.
Oh, I think it was whatever you just went through in that last part. Is that in the video too?
Everything I haven't stopped recording yet, so yeah, the video is still recording. Oh, you're talking about the nerd stuff. Yes, that's in the third video. That's modeling the glass. Actually, you can do like a wine glass in like 2 minutes. It's really good. But if you're drinking wine with breakfast, maybe you should talk to somebody. Yeah.
The wine and cereal.
Yeah.
What about a
I don't
mimosa?
know. Okay. Well, you're supposed to pour that straight into the coffee. So. All right, cool. Any other questions about anything? Anything in the universe? No. Bluebell. Cookies and cream. Butter pecan's good too.
He tried that dude's ice cream. He like makes homemade ice cream when he comes to a farmer's market. He makes good homemade ice cream. It's not in one of like the trucks. He normally has one of the little tent stands, and he's closer towards the end.
Like the medical building.
He
or whatever.
also sells like bottles of different flavored Coca-Cola as well, and tea and all that. I love what he sells. He makes good stuff. He also makes vegan ice cream if you're into that.
All right, cool. Well, the rest of the class is yours. I'll be hanging around until you've all abandoned me, gone off to other ventures. No, I know y'all have another class after this, so I'll hang around until it seems like y'all are out of questions, and then hopefully I'll see some of you tonight. And so, cool. I'll upload the video for YouTube now. So.
We're gonna try to go.